Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'll be using the new MTPredictor version 7.5 beta to have a look at the USE minis and how they unfolded yesterday, particularly as the more advanced traders would have used the larger degree trend. So for your 3 and 5 minute charts, which is what I'm looking at here, this is a 3-minute chart of the ES. And I want to particularly have a look at this DP sell at basically the high of the day yesterday. So if we go to the 15-minute charts, I'd like to start on the YM to start with because this is a bit more obvious. If I zoom in a bit, I'll just take that off. If we go back to the prior pivot, which was here the day before, we put the decision point on and now extend it out a bit. Can you see how the YM rallied up and actually reached this decision point resistance area at about 11:45, so just before 12 o'clock New York time yesterday. So remember that on the YM at around 12 o'clock New York time yesterday, it was entering 15-minute larger degree resistance. If we have a look at the NQ, exactly the same. I'll again do this again. If I put the DP on from the prior pivot, extend it out a bit, you can see that's exactly what happened with the market entering the DP at 11:45 and actually giving us an automatic DP sell at the 12 o'clock bar. So again, midday on the NQ, the 15-minute chart was at decision point resistance. If we have a look at the Russell Index, again exactly the same thing is happening with the market entering the 15-minute resistance at 11:45. So there you go, 3 out of the 4 USE minis were at larger degree 15-minute resistance at about 12 o'clock New York time. If we go to the ES, it's a little bit more complicated than that because I'd normally take the DP off the prior sort of major pivot, which is back here. And as you can see, that's above where the market was yesterday. The other pivot is also in and around this level here, which the market's beyond. The other area we'd look at is a Elliott wave pattern, and as you can see again, the WPT level is slightly beyond yesterday's high. So was there any other place we could have used on the ES yesterday? Well, if we look at the swing down into the low a few days ago, if we put the Elliott wave pattern on, you can see how this was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the low right at the minimum wave 5 WPT. And what I normally say is if we exceed the wave 4 or the DP from the prior wave 4, which we did here, then the market will retrace the entire prior 5-wave sequence. So in this case we go back to the start of the sequence, which was actually here. Remember, I used my unique isolation approach for Elliott wave, so in this case the sequence started not at the exact high but just after it here. And if I put a decision point on from that level and now take it across, can you see how it actually caught yesterday's high? Now I have to stress this, I normally wouldn't go to such lengths on the ES 15-minute chart to gain a resistance zone. I'd normally have just used the pivot back here and used that. The only reason I'm just pushing this ever so slightly on the ES is because the YM was at 15-minute resistance, nice and clear and easy. The NQ was at 15-minute resistance, nice and clear and easy, and the Russell Index was also at 15-minute resistance. So when 3 out of the 4 were all telling you the same thing, therefore I could push this little bit and as such accept that the ES was going into resistance again around this exactly the same time. If I scroll in, exactly the 11:45 to 12:15, in other words around, or 12 o'clock, around the midday New York time. So what does that mean for our 3-minute chart? Well, if we look at our 3-minute chart, we had our first sell at exactly 12 o'clock. So how does that sell fit in with the larger degree trend? Well, the STF color here is blue. You see it's blue. So normally for new MTPredictor users, we'd say this is against the large degree trend and not take the setup. But as I've just outlined at the beginning of this video, this was actually at 15-minute resistance on definitely 3 out of the 4 and also at a slight push the ES. So therefore this was a good trade to take. Let's put the analysis on. There's our DP sell. You'd have been taken in at the low of that bar. Market goes down to your first level, where a potential 3.7R profit is available. Remember, we use correct position sizing to vary the number of lots, contracts or shares to keep our initial risk small and under control. At this point the STF is actually strong, so you could have used the ATR stop to run that just a little bit further and been stopped out at this point here as the market came back for a nice 4R profit. But I'd like to show you a little bit of something very amazing that unfolded yesterday, because here we were short from the very high of the day. Let's just clear this off. I want to just go to the 15-minute chart, and I want to put the DP on from this prior low, which was here, and we can actually see that this actually did come down and catch this low. But I want to show you what happened if I go back to the 3-minute chart as this was unfolding. So here we had this level on the chart in advance. Remember, that's the important point about these decision points, is they are leading indicators. They are on the chart in advance. So as this market was coming down here and you were short, you knew that this area was a larger degree support zone in advance before the market even got there. And as you can see, that nailed the very low of the day for you absolutely perfectly. More amazing than that, if we look at the minor pattern in this decline here, for this let's hover over the bar at the bottom, right mouse click, do Elliott wave minor. Can we see how we actually had a beautiful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the low pretty much at the minimum wave 5 WPT there. So can you see, as you were short, when the market got into this area here, you were both at decision point support on your 15-minute or larger degree chart and at a wave pattern that was signaling the decline was nearing an end, and so it's very hard to say, and also at a level where that wave 5 pattern was almost like to end as well. If I go to the volume, this was also a beautiful volume, high volume VSA setup, whereas this bar here made a new low below here, gave us a high volume VSA setup, it then reversed the very next bar. So there are actually 3 or 4 things coming together here to tell you that this decline was over. As such, it made sense to start to trail your protective stop at the bar highs at that particular level. And this would have meant you'd have come out with a lovely plus 6.9R profit. But the amazing thing was, if I zoom out a bit, this would have meant that you'd have had a short trade from the very high of the day and actually taken profits at pretty much the low of the day. In other words, the best a trader could ask for. The large degree trend was now up, so therefore would you have been looking to take these sell setups that are now against this larger degree uptrend? And obviously the answer is no. You'd be looking for buy setups. If you've been following all 4 USE minis, there was actually a very nice TS3 buy setup here later in the day on the Russell Index. And just notice on the Russell Index, if I put the DP on from that prior pivot, see how it nailed the high absolutely perfectly. There's our last swing into the high. We put the DP on from that low, and just look at that, nailed the low absolutely perfectly. Market rallies up brilliantly. There's your TS3 buy setup with the STF color as well. So you had another opportunity to make a profitable long trade later in the day on the Russell. But just to summarize on the ES, and to summarize on the USE minis generally, so yesterday we had the ES making a high right at the 15-minute, the YM making a high right at 15-minute resistance, DP resistance, the NQ doing exactly the same, the Russell Index doing exactly the same. We then extended that ever so slightly on the ES to get our 15-minute resistance there. We also put our 15-minute support on from this low here, which actually nailed the low of the ES later on. We then combined that all together with the automatic sell setup here. Remember, not this one here because we weren't at 15-minute resistance, but this one here. That allows us to take a new short trade at pretty much the high of the day. The market came down into larger degree support with our 5-wave declining pattern and our VSA and other items coming in here at the bottom here to allow us to come out at pretty much the low of the day. So there you go, MTPredictor having a brilliant short trade on the ES from the very high of the day into the very low of the day for a lovely profit of approximately plus 6.9R or 6.9 times the initial risk required to take the trade. So a lovely example of all the MTPredictor tools all coming into play to give you a very good trading day yesterday.